It's easier to put ourselves in a box when we see someone, and like we have this like these boxes full of ideas and preconceptions, and they're usually misconceptions. And so when we approach someone like them, and usually the most obvious identifier is skin color or something about them, some outward appearance, it's easier to categorize. If I were to go up to a white person one day and they were really mean to me, like unnecessarily, instead of taking the time to acknowledge the next white person I come across as a person. Yeah. Freaking white people. No, instead of like trying to like acknowledge them as a full human being, as an individual separate from another human being, I get lazy. I close myself into this box and I just move on from that box. Instead of getting myself out of the box and considering them as an individual, I start just generalizing, because that's what we do.
I was at a pre-college program, and I was in this advanced creative writing class, and everybody know like my skin is brown, obviously, but this girl that was there, she was Caucasian, and she was writing a story, but what she did was she wanted to implement Disney characters in it. So what she did was she pinpointed which character in the room everyone would be. So she said, yeah, so she was like, I'm gonna be Cinderella, Deidre, you're gonna be Princess Tiana, of course. And I was like, well, what does that mean? She was like, well, you're black, so you would be the black princess. I said, no, but maybe I want to be Cinderella too. So it was like, that was one of my first things of really experiencing. I was hurt at first, like, oh, you're saying I have to be this person because of my skin color, but then it was like another instance with the way I talk. It was like, oh my gosh, you actually talk proper. I didn't know black people talk like that. I was like, so you thought I said, hey, yo, homie, what's good? I don't talk like that. My education level is the reason why I talk like this. Not my skin color is not the reason of influencing how I talk. So yeah, those were very hurtful instances, but it was like, it really opened up my eyes to like what it was. Because I always heard about it, but I never experienced it. So it really opened up my eyes to like how it felt.
I've been told several times, actually, by friends of mine that I'm pretty white for a brown girl. And every time they said that, I just got so confused. I'm like, well, what does that mean? They're like, you talk properly, and then there's some other brown kids at our school, and they seem to think that we fit into two categories. The ones who get into hip-hop and they use more slang, and they're like, those are like the black brown people. They said this to my face. And then, like, they're the ones who hang out with us and they take all the AP classes, and they're the white brown people. And what is that?
So I've always been a firm believer in education and the power of education and exposure to like change the way that young kids, especially, who are so susceptible to falling into the traps of society and like becoming discriminatory because that's what they've been taught since they were just little. And I think that if we are able to tell people from a very young age to accept new ideas and to be aware of just the people around them and to recognize that different ideas and different people can also, you can relate to them, I think that we can make like a drastic change in our society.
The important part is having a conversation about it. The actual trading of ideas is what creates like equilibrium in society, and there's no way that we can achieve that type of balance and that type of functional system if everyone is too like wrapped up in just kind of going into themselves and not talking about things. And I understand if you're introverted, that's not what I'm saying, but it is important that people's ideas are being shared and communicated. It's one thing to listen, but also it's important to be able to talk about your ideas, or else you're never going to be able to work out the kinks of like your mindset. So I think especially with racism, it's important to educate, but it's also very important to discuss.
Racism stems from a certain level of ignorance, and there's some ignorance, there's nothing you can do about it. You're born ignorant to a degree, but we're living in this really great age where we control the media. We have the power to start a conversation. We can use social media to start a conversation. So, I mean, in this room, I think we should make it our goal to start the conversation, because there's no excuse. We all have an opportunity to make a difference, and the more we talk about it, the less emphasis we put on race itself and more on the person, the easier it's going to be for racism to go away. Although I don't think racism will ever completely go away, especially in America, because we live with all of these different races and it has a huge representation of every culture. I think that it's our job and we should take this on to kind of get rid of racism.
It's very obviously important to have conversation about it because there's a lot of, well, I don't know what's right to say. Well, if you don't talk about it, you'll never know what's right. So it's important to have the conversation in that will let people know, at least for the person sitting in front of them, and you have to make them aware that this is what the person sitting in front of me thinks. It's not what every person of this race or ethnicity thinks. That this is what they think is okay to say to them about their race. This is how they should be addressed. And I think that takes away the whole icky blanket that's sitting on top of it that nobody really wants to touch. And it'll make everything a lot easier, and race should be talked about, should be celebrated.